Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nobody is Shiftier, because in fact, nobody is shiftier than the Shifty Hippo. Got a little bit of exciting news for everybody that listens to the show. We are doing 2 episodes here this week, as time has permitted. I am off today and I'm off tomorrow. I have found a lot of recent new time, which I'll dive into in a second here. But for me, what I decided I wanted to do with today is give you guys a breakdown of last week's football because I got to watch a lot of it. And then tomorrow, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a upcoming week look in. Just, my thoughts, my opinions on what next week's games are going to be. It'll work out as well. Granted, I don't know if tomorrow's episode will be out on the same day, but it will be before the Thursday night football game. So you'll have all of my thoughts and opinions on next week prior to the first game actually being played. However, once again, you might not actually get the episode until later. Just keep in mind, predated it. All right. So today we're going to go through last week. But first, one thing I noticed I got a little bit away from in the last couple of weeks here. I haven't been giving you guys a whole lot. I like to do something as almost like a story or something outside of sports entirely, just to start the show. And it's not to take over the episode, but just to give you guys a little bit of insight. And plus, as much as we all love sports, if we listen to somebody drone about sports literally for an hour at a time and they didn't talk about anything else and they didn't do a little bit of funny in there, if they don't tell you anything, well, I mean, do you really feel like you had a good time with it? I mean, yeah, it's cool watching people nerd out on football. I enjoy it as much as anybody else, but I want somebody to have a personality. I want them to talk to me a little bit. Even Colin Cowherd used to do this segment called Uncle Colin. Like, I loved that shit when I was 16 years old. Like that was funny. That was him showing me his personality and talking to me. You said he was talking to the kids. I was a kid. So, guys, I wanted to talk to you about a little bit of why I came across all this new free time, right? So I got my endoscopy, which I told you guys about. Things are looking pretty good from it. I do have a precancerous condition in my esophagus, but it's not currently at a cancerous state. It's something that actually even pretty rarely becomes cancer. So it's something they're going to monitor. They're giving me meds to try to heal up the inflammation, and they're really just going to monitor what's going on. But one of the things that the doctor talked to me about was that I drink way too much, right? Understandable. You guys have listened to me do this show for as long as I've done this show. For anybody that listens to Jacked and Canned, you guys know that I pound beers all throughout Jacked and Canned all the time. Well, that's also pretty much been my life. So that's not like just during recording hours. Like I leave the recording and I just go drink more beer. So the doctor was like, "Hey, you're going to want to figure this out or else, probably not going to live that long." And I don't like the way that sounds. So I took some steps here and, I kind of distanced myself from everybody for about a week and a half while I kind of went through the battle, if you will. And it's not, this isn't going to be this thing where I tell you now I like go to AA and I'm totally sober. No. But we're cutting back immensely, right? So when I'm taking a beer break today, it's going to be with a Busch NA, non-alcoholic. And, this isn't to celebrate like that I'm recovered or whatever. And it's not even to say like, hey, I'm making a step and I'm no longer drinking. I'm drinking on Saturday. It's going to happen. Like I want to. I'm just making the effort to not drink because I'm off today, So for whatever it's worth, and I'm not trying to be here as inspirational guy because again, I'm drinking on Saturday. Do not use me as your martyr. That is not who I am. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. What I found is that now that I'm not taking some time to just be like, drinking a beer and then kind of zoning out and thinking, whatever in my mind, I found myself with a lot of free time. So Monday and Sunday night, actually, mostly Sunday night during the football game, you know how a lot of people do like 2 TVs and they're watching one game over here, red zones over here. Well, look, I only got one TV in my room. So I was watching the Los Angeles Chargers and San Francisco game on my TV, and on my phone, I was watching the highlights of every game that took place last week. So not only do I looked at all the stats, not have I just looked at all the box scores, not have I just looked at the stats of like time of possession and shit like that, but additionally, I have seen the highlights on all but three of the games from last week. And I will be totally real with you guys on exactly what three games those are. And I will tell you why those are the three games. Game one is Atlanta and Carolina from Thursday night last week. I was still kind of battling last week. So I don't even think Breaking Down the Tape did a live last Thursday. And obviously, if they did, I wasn't a part of it because I was still kind of in myself there, right? But on top of that, I couldn't care less about that game. There was nothing that interests me about that game. Didn't want any part of it. Second game that I didn't watch, New Orleans, Pittsburgh. Don't care. Saw the score. Boring as hell. I did go and look at the box scores and all the stats and everything else, and boring game. I don't need to see it. I know what that game was. And the third game was the Texans and Giants game. You can say what you want about the 7-2 Giants, but I'm not overly impressed with the Giants. So for me, they're uninteresting. And additionally, I mean, the Texans, let's be real, that's not a team that anybody's going, wow, I got to see the Texans game. Not this year. There have been years that you want to see the Texans game. This is not one of them. So I was at work when that game was going on. Every time that I walked into the break room to drink a water, that game was on TV. So I did catch little bits of it here and there, but I pretty much could tell, like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to even watch this game. You know what? I'm going to chug this water so I can go back and get back to work because I don't actually want to watch this, even while at work. I would rather be at work. So those are the three games that I did not actually watch. But now we're going to talk a little bit about each game. And I will still speak to the three games that I didn't watch because even though I didn't catch anything from those games visually, I can still give you a pretty good synopsis of what happened just by looking at really box scores and stats. I don't like being the guy that gives you a read of a game via box scores and stats. I hate that guy. But let's be real. Those three games, I think I can do it. We're going to take a little drink of the Bush NA here, and then we're going to get into it. All right. So obviously, last Thursday night, we did have the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Final score ended up 22-15 in favor of Carolina. Not a very impressive outing from Carolina. The biggest takeaways that I had from that game by looking through the box score simply, PJ Walker, obviously, he hurt his ankle during the game, so Baker Mayfield will be starting this next week. But when you look at PJ Walker's really two of the last three games, I don't remember if it's back-to-back games now or if I think it's 2 out of 3. I think he had a good week last week. But PJ Walker really, I mean, he threw for like just over 100 yards. Completion percentage was all right. No touchdowns, no picks, so he didn't mess anything up. But you couldn't have been impressed by the PJ Walker experience. The big key that Carolina found, Dante Foreman, who, by the way, I didn't even know was a Panther until a couple of weeks ago. I thought he was still backing up Derrick Henry, and I couldn't understand why Tennessee wasn't utilizing him more. Because I'm like, you guys got to give Derrick Henry a break. Like, you have a good backup running back. I didn't realize he wasn't there. Honestly, totally blew my world a couple of weeks ago when I found that out. So that made a lot more sense to me why Derrick Henry keeps carrying the ball 32 times every fucking week. But as I look to what Carolina did with him specifically, and not just him, but the rushing game in general, they averaged 4.9 yards a carry on what was, I want to say, like 47 total carries between the entirety of their rushing game. That's a lot. Dante Foreman, I believe, carried the ball 33 times, and his average, I want to say, was closer to lower fours because he ended up with like 120 something yards. But when you total out what they did from a rushing perspective, you look at that and you say, oh, well, yeah, that's where that came from. And when you look at time of possession, it wasn't massively overly Carolina's. It wasn't something where you're looking at it going, wow, Carolina just dominated the ball all game. No, not necessarily, but they moved strategically, and Atlanta did somewhat of the same. But when it came down to it, Carolina was able to get out to a big enough lead that Atlanta couldn't really come back to it. And when you get on top, it's a lot easier to keep handing the ball to your big ass Dante Foreman in the backfield, who's able to just truckload over the entire Atlanta defense. Which, let's be real, Atlanta, even though they've been somewhat of a surprise this year, they haven't been very good defensively. That has not been the strong suit of the Atlanta Falcons. What they are good at is utilizing the very best of Marcus Mariota. That's where Atlanta succeeds. So they can get a lot going. If their run game gets going at all, they can go with a lot of play action stuff, some RPOs in there, because Mariota is a very gifted athlete as well. But when you look at what it is that Falcons team is about, it's offensively driven. That defense has given up a lot to pretty much everybody they've played. So Carolina was just able to utilize what they had going for them, which was Dante Foreman. By the way, they need to make sure that they keep doing that. I know that they had Christian McCaffrey there earlier on in the year, so I understand why you didn't play Foreman as much. At this point, just keep running the guy. I mean, he's basically like a lesser Derrick Henry. He's not Derrick Henry. Please do not mistake what I'm saying there. I am not telling you that this guy is Derrick Henry. But I'm telling you that he runs a lot like Derrick Henry, and his size is relatively similar to that of Derrick Henry. I think that you got to just keep feeding him the ball if you're Carolina. We're going to move on to the game in Germany. My Seattle Seahawks against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Final score 21-16 in favor of Tampa. This game really, I think, mostly came down to the fact that Tampa was able to start out 21-3 in this game. Seattle had to abandon the run. They only handed it to Kenneth Walker 10 times, which has not been the MO of the Seahawks the entirety of the time since he has come into the lineup. So for the Seahawks to get down that way and then abandon the run, if you look at the rushing yardage differential between the two teams, Seattle had 39 rushing yards. Tampa had 161. That's a massive difference. And obviously Tampa with the big lead, of course they're going to run the ball more, but they were able to do so successfully. As a Seahawk fan, this worries me that my run defense is clearly a flaw, even though the pass defense, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we've had an incredible pass defense because we have had holes there where we've given up big chunk plays. But for the most part, I think that our secondaries played very well against the pass, and our linebackers tend to play pretty well against the pass. But our front four doesn't really stop the run, and that's something that we're going to have to worry about going on throughout the course of the year. The other piece of this game that you could take away from is the difference in third down conversions. Seattle was 1 for 9 and Tampa was 10 for 15. I mean, there it is. If you can't get out of a third down here and there, you're going to be in trouble. 1 for 9 is one of the worst ones this week as far as going through all the third down conversions that I saw. And that's really going to make a massive impact because when your defense is struggling to stop the run in the first place and then you're giving up 10 third downs in a game, well, your defense is going to get tired. And when your defense gets tired, guess what else happens? Your run defense gets worse. And as the year progresses and it gets colder outside, that's something that actually really worries me as a Seahawk fan. However, I do think next week, this next week here, we're on bye. But I think coming out of that bye, we'll be able to get the run game started off early and we'll be able to capitalize to some extent anyway. I actually don't even remember who we come out of the bye against, but I'm not too worried about it. I just think it's something to look into as far as getting into December and January, where we're obviously viable for a playoff spot. We need to be able to stop the run occasionally. That's going to be worrisome. From the Tampa perspective, great on them. It was good to see Brady. This is the second time this year that I feel like Brady's legitimately looked good. So I like seeing that, even though I don't understand why anybody keeps trotting Brady out there trying to catch a pass. I understand the part where, yes, it's very unexpected because it never works. So stop trying to utilize Tom Brady in a passing game as the receiver. It doesn't ever work. We've seen it. It doesn't happen. I've seen him drop balls, whatever the hell he did against Seattle. He just face planted. It's not good. So stop doing that, Tampa. But I was happy to see that because I do want Tampa to be good. Not just because they were my preseason Super Bowl prediction, but because I mean, it's getting close to the end. I don't want Brady to fade away like so many quarterbacks do, where it's just kind of like a misery at the end. I don't want to see that with him. We move on to game 3. The Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears, final score 31-30 in favor of Detroit. Um, yeah, when you look at this one here, it was cool to see a couple of things. Really, both offenses have gotten for Detroit getting back to what they were doing early this year, where their pass game's been more successful. And I think a lot of that, there's two things that really contribute to that. One of which is when their run attack is actually working. And it wasn't great this last week, but I have noticed that when DeAndre Swift is in the lineup, there tends to at least be the presence of, oh shit, we got to make sure that we're here in case the ball is run. When he wasn't there for a few weeks, I feel like teams, they didn't have to load up on run defense. If they were loading the box, it was to send it straight at Goff, who's not great under pressure. Now, the other piece here is Amon-Ra St. Brown came back a couple weeks back, but since his return, this passing offense, even after dishing out TJ Hawkinson, it's been successful because that guy is a very good receiver. I don't know that you'd necessarily want him as your number one guy on a playoff team, but he's absolutely, if nothing else, a very, very good number 2 receiver. He's incredible. So we got to see him get involved there, 10 catches for 119 yards, but Justin Fields, man, not long ago, I was calling him the worst quarterback in the NFL. They figured it out how to utilize him, and it's just let the guy run and then throw the ball when he needs to throw the ball. He's going to make mistakes like that pick that he had late in the game. That shit's going to happen, all right? You're not going to have perfect weeks every week, especially with somebody who's almost more so having a little bit of a coming out party than anything else right now. But they went from being a team that moved the ball less than any other team in the league to a team that's been putting up points. I think they've scored 30 or more in the last 3 games. Like this is a massive difference. I mean, you look at what Justin Fields did last week, 12 for 20, 160 yards or 2 touchdowns and a pick. It doesn't sound impressive from the passing perspective, but when you keep in mind that he ran the ball 13 times for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns, well, then you don't need him to always be throwing the ball. If you look at a Lamar Jackson box score on a regular basis, you're going to be disappointed because you're going to be like, well, what do you mean? He only threw for 212 yards, 54% completion percentage. What's that? Well, that's part of what you get with Lamar Jackson. You also get that, 75-yard run out of nowhere. Like, that's the cool thing about Justin Fields. He has a lot of that in him. Now, when you look at the actual stats on this, the funny thing about this game is that everything was almost dead ass even. Like first downs were even, third down conversions were almost even, punts were even, everything was even, time of possession was even. The two differences was the one turnover, the one Justin Fields pick, which, yes, that will hurt you, especially in a game that has no other turnovers. And then when you look at the penalties, Detroit had 2, Chicago had 9. 9 penalties hurts. Like if you're a team that has 5 penalties in a game, you can still win a game just fine. You start talking about 7, 8, 9 double digits, you're really hurting yourselves. You're probably oftentimes shooting yourself in the foot. You're probably getting third down conversions, but they're coming back because of a holding call. You're going to have third down stops, but oh shit, you held the receiver and you got a defensive holding call, automatic first down. That's where those penalties really creep in there and make a difference. And even though I didn't look into exactly what those 9 penalties were, I have to imagine some of them were in key scenarios that could have either gotten their defense off the field or kept their offense on the field. And those are big ones. Game 4 here, we got Cleveland and Miami. Ends up being 39-17 in favor of Miami. By the way, has anybody noticed that Tua is leading the league in quarterback rating? Just throwing that out there. I didn't know that up until last week. I knew that he was having a really good year, honestly, and I know that he hasn't thrown a pick since he came back from the concussion. But holy shit, number 1, huh? That's pretty impressive. When you look at what he did specifically this week, and at this point, he's making himself an MVP candidate. He was 25 for 32, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. The big thing that they've had going for him, though, in the last couple of weeks is they're really getting that run game going. Who knew that moving away from Chase Edmonds and bringing in Jeff Wilson? Because like when those moves happened, I was like, okay. I don't think I would have done that. No, it was big. I had no idea. When you look at what Wilson and Mostert did together, 25 carries, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what that with the Mike McDaniel based off the Kyle Shanahan offense. That's what's there to be provided from this new offensive wave that's here in Miami. Because as you get later into the year, as I mentioned with some of the prior games, you're going to need your run game. It can't just be Tua going into a snowy Buffalo in the middle of December or somewhere in the playoffs and Tua ripping it around the field to Tyreek Hill, who's streaking by everybody. When it's snowing out there and it's slippery and it's really hard to throw the ball, it's windy, it's going to be a lot tougher to hit all these patterns the same way. You're going to need your run game to be there. And that's the only thing that I think could have deterred Miami. But if they can keep running the ball the way they have, like 2 out of the last 3 weeks, they're going to be just fine. I actually am starting to think that Miami's a realistic contender as far as the Super Bowl is concerned. Something that even though you saw flashes of it earlier in the year because of the crazy offense and, oh my God, it's kind of like Mahomes and Allen. Yeah, he's not them, but his efficiency is incredible. And when you pair that with the idea of a run game really coming to fruition, I think that Miami's going to be a viable team at the end of this season. I'm very curious to see, and I'm excited for the playoff run here. Some of the other things you could look at from this game, yards per play. Cleveland 4.8, Miami with what I think is the highest of the week, 7.3. I mean, that's a mass difference. Can you imagine? So 4.8 yards per play. That means you're typically going to end up with a 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6 versus 7.3, 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3. You know how much easier it is to operate from a 2nd and 2 than it is from a 2nd and 6? And 4.8 is not the worst, by the way. 4.8 is not a terrible yards per play. It's not great, but it's not terrible. I love the idea of that. I mean, that's just a massive difference right there. When you look at the difference in just simply passing yards, we're talking about 185 to 296. Rush yards, 112 to 195. You can do the math to come up with the total yardage. Miami dominated every facet of this game, and this is just further proof to me that Miami, even though this is a game at home against a Cleveland Browns team that you're not overly impressed with, I really liked seeing it. We're going to take a little swig of the Busch NA here. Next game, we got Denver at Tennessee. This one went 17-10 in favor of Tennessee. Now, I'm not actually going to really list any stats in this one because this game was more so a feel game than anything else. Ryan Tannehill did have a nice return. He had, I want to say, right around 250 yards. Derrick Henry didn't get going. Nothing really got going on Denver's side of the ball, but nothing was really going much in the way of Tennessee's side of the ball either. I mean, they had that one or two big plays. Yeah, I think they had 2 big plays. But this game was more so a feel game, right? Denver's coming off the bye, and you think to yourself, well, this is the chance to shine. Like, hey, whatever you got left in your bag of tricks from that coaching staff, Nathaniel Hackett and those guys, you got to start pulling it out here. You got to get something going. And Russell Wilson was 21 for 42 throwing the ball. I mean, that's just not good. And look, I don't think that Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are necessarily the best weapons, but they are not bad weapons. This team is going to have to do better. So I don't want to dive too much into this game outside of saying that I think that Tennessee is going to be the same Tennessee that we've seen over the last few years, capable of being a 1 seed in the AFC, probably not capable of beating teams like Buffalo and Kansas City in the playoffs. Denver, you guys are fucked. I'm sorry, man. Like, thank you for the pick you're going to give us next year in the first round. I appreciate that because I can't wait to use it to draft a quarterback. Hopefully, you can sit behind Geno for a year or two, and we can do something from that position that you don't get to see anymore, which is a rookie actually getting to sit for a year. That's what I'd really like to see out of this. But Denver season's done. That was the last chance I was really giving them. Next game, Minnesota Buffalo. Jesus. All right. I mean, I can start reading stats, or I can just tell you about this game. Like this game, Buffalo was up 17 right around the timing of the fourth quarter. I believe it was in the fourth quarter. And then something that has been happening for the last about 3 weeks took place again, which was Josh Allen getting wild with the ball. Josh Allen, once upon a time, early this year and all of last year, and really even the year before, didn't have the same level of mistakes that he had early in his career. Say, for example, his rookie year, playoff experience. I mean, we've seen Josh Allen have weird meltdowns, even though in that last playoff game, that was just a battle to the end of Mahomes versus Allen. Like that was just beautiful. I can't say anything about Josh Allen losing that game, but the way that Josh Allen loses this one, you can say what you will about the fumble at your own one. Look, that's a hard play to execute. I don't think anybody's given that enough credit because I keep hearing around the entirety of the NFL, well, this is an easy one. You got to take the snap and just charge up the middle. Right. You think that's easy to do with 40 seconds left in the game? You're within your own 1 yard line and you're catching the ball at the goal line and the defense is already busted through there and you're just trying not to get a safety at that point. You're doing whatever you can to get your hands on that ball and all the pressure is lapsed right there. Everybody, all 22 players are at that ball right just now. That's not easy. I'm not actually disappointed with that fumble. The Patrick Peterson pick, that not the one that ended the game, but the one before that, that one was even understandable because that was a third down play. I mean, yeah, you could have thrown the ball away, but I understand what he was going for there. The game ender, that was a bad one. You're down by 3, you're in field goal range, pretty easy field goal range, I might add. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think that was a third down. I think it was a second down, but even if it was third down, you can still kick the field goal, tie the game, and keep playing. Like, there was no need to try to force that ball in there. And that was just Josh Allen being reckless. And we've seen a lot of that in the last 3 weeks. And I keep hearing that he's reverting back to what he was before Dayball was there. And get over it. Like, I don't want to hear that. That's dumb. I do think that he just has typically reckless behavior. Sure, you can give Dayball credit for helping him fix it. I don't think that Dayball leaving means that he reverts back and he just forgot everything he ever learned from him. No, I think Josh Allen has realized he's fucked up a few times. And I think we're going to see a lot less of that. I really think we're going to see Josh taking this one to heart, this one specifically. You saw him when he threw the pick, the way he reacted. He is pissed about the way that he did that. And he's pissed at himself. He's not pissed at anybody else. He's pissed at himself. Josh Allen is, in my opinion, the second best quarterback in the NFL. He's going to get that back together. He's going to be in there making it happen a week from now. We'll move on to the next game, but I still have very high hopes for Buffalo. Other key takeaway here, though, before I move off of this, Minnesota, I can't skip this. That Justin Jefferson catch, holy fucking shit. I'm still like, I got to go back and figure out what my top 5 list would be for best catches I have ever seen. Off top of mind, I can't think of one that's better than that. Everybody's been saying the Odell one. No. I'm taking that one over the Odell one. I 100%. Odell didn't one hand take it from a defender who had the ball in his hands. And also, I don't know if you guys noticed the way that Jefferson palmed the ball on his way down. Like, that physics don't make sense with that. Like, he literally defied laws of gravity. I saw something that looked humanly impossible, but I saw it. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I definitely haven't seen anything like that. At some point, I got to come up with a top 5 catches of all time list because, it's definitely on my top 5. But I think it honestly might be the best catch I've ever seen. That shit was incredible. I couldn't believe it. I had seen buddies of mine texting about it, and I was obviously at work while this was going on, so I caught it after. And then when I finally got to it, I said, "Oh, holy shit." Like, he did that? It was, yeah, that lived all the way up to the hype. But good for Minnesota. I still, even at 8-1, don't trust them. But it's when I say that I don't trust them, I think I trust them as far as the rest of the NFC is concerned. I don't trust them against Kansas City or Buffalo again. I mean, we saw Buffalo dominate them for the first 3 quarters of that game and then basically hand them the game back. I have a hard time looking at that and going, yep, Minnesota, they're the team this year. I just don't see it. They kind of keep squeaking by. We're going to dive into Houston and the Giants here. Look, frankly, nobody really cares about this game, but when I look at this, I mean, Davis Mills, if he's nothing else, he's a very good backup quarterback in all seriousness. Like, I really like watching Davis Mills play. He threw another 300-yard game here, and I know that he's also come out and had some, 160-yard games, so you can't sit there and say that he's some type of great quarterback. And I'm not even sure that he's starting caliber in the NFL, but I do believe he is a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. I think I'd take him over Baker Mayfield at this point, and I think I might even have Baker in the top 32. I'd really have to think about that. I'd have to break down, oh God, top 5 catches and top 32 quarterbacks. Here it comes. From the Giants' perspective, Daniel Jones still underwhelming. They rely way too much on Saquon Barkley, 35 carries this week. I mean, yeah, he's contributing. I mean, he's very successful when the ball's in his hands. I get it. I'd probably keep handing the ball a lot too, but you got to put a cap on that. Same as you have to with Derrick Henry. There's a certain amount of carries that you can give somebody before you got to just go, nah, we got to give it to another guy for a little bit. Like, give him a rest because you're going to wear those guys out. And the Giants aren't going to be able to do anything in the playoffs if Saquon Barkley's not in the lineup. You can't get this guy hurt. Stop handing him the ball so much. We're going to move over to Jacksonville, Kansas City. Kansas City wins this game 27-17. It's funny. I heard a lot of people saying that Patrick Mahomes, I heard, well, the Kansas City offense is clearly not as dynamic as it was last year. I mean, 27 points. It's not very impressive. Yeah. Let me just read this line real quick. Patrick Mahomes, 30 for 50, 357 yards. I just read Kirk Cousins' stat line. 26 for 35, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. By the way, 4 different receivers for the touchdowns. This was not 4 to Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes has become this new monster, and the entire NFL should be terrified. We knew that he could do the deep pass to Tyreek Hill and then throw it underneath Travis Kelce, and it would throw off everybody. Oh, holy shit. And we were used to that, right? And that was already the best thing in football. Well, now he's got all these weapons that are all good, and I don't know that any of them are great outside of Kelce, but between all these guys, like, they all contribute and they all make plays. They all have different skill sets. A lot of these guys are still speed guys, but they can use them in all sorts of different things. I mean, that Kadarius Toney touchdown was like a pass to the flats. There's nothing that this team is doing poorly right now offensively as far as the passing perspective goes. From a rushing standpoint, I do think that Isaiah Pacheco is a very beneficial running back there for them to have, because I think he gives a different element than Edwards-Helaire does. But I'm more so just impressed with the new form of Patrick Mahomes that now almost reminds me of like Peyton Manning back in the mid 2000s when he had Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Brandon Stokely, where you're seeing the ball spread around. The difference is that none of these guys are elite receivers like Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne were, but they're all good. And Patrick Mahomes is making them better the same way that, well, let's put it this way. You might remember around the same time frame, Tom Brady had a whole bunch of, it was Troy Brown, Deion Branch, David Patton. Like, there's a guy named Doug Gabriel. You probably don't even remember Doug Gabriel. Doug Gabriel was the shit for a season, and then Oakland gave him a big deal, and, well, you never heard from him ever again. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is doing some different shit right now. From the Jacksonville perspective, I mean, Trevor Lawrence looks a lot better this year than he did in year one. And I think you have something to grow off of. Obviously, yeah, Jacksonville's not going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be anything to be feared this year, but you have something to build on. I am excited to see what Jacksonville does with this because I do think they've gained a lot of the right pieces. We're going to move over to New Orleans and Pittsburgh. I'll probably talk very little about this game just because it's incredibly uninteresting. But New Orleans ends up losing this one 20-10 to Pittsburgh. Not a whole lot in the way of stats to really even give you guys here. I think you could read this game from a few perspectives here. Total yardage 186 to 379. Pittsburgh moved the ball, New Orleans didn't. Okay. Rush yards 29 to 217. Okay. Pittsburgh ran the ball. New Orleans, for some reason, didn't. Alvin Kamara had 8 carries. Probably should get the ball in his hands more. He also only had 3 catches. Most dangerous player on the team, only catching the ball. Okay. Third downs, 3 for 12 versus 9 for 17. 9 for 17 is pretty good. 3 for 12 is piss poor. Time of possession, 21 minutes to 39 minutes. I mean, okay. Game's covered. Move on. Indianapolis at Las Vegas. Indy wins this one 25-20, and I think this is an indictment of just how bad the Raiders are right now. Because honestly, there's no reason that Jeff Saturday should be an NFL head coach at this moment. He's got no experience coming in off the streets. I know that the guy's got tons of football knowledge and experience, but he hasn't coached anything before. Or, you know what? I take it back. Let me just say this. He hasn't coached anything in the NFL yet. And they immediately put him as a head coach for the Colts as somebody that was just a team consultant. This one's a bad move. That's going to come back to bite them. Matt Ryan with the 39-yard run. I mean, Jesus. Career high run for Matt Ryan. That should pretty much tell you all you need to know about this game. Yards per play, Indy had 7. And once again, Vegas had 4.8. Vegas had 10 penalties. We obviously saw Derek Carr's reaction after the game. This is really just showing you that Vegas is in real trouble. Because honestly, I will tell you guys ahead of time right now, my favorite pick this week. I got this at this spread, and I don't know what it is now, but Indianapolis is going to Philly this week, and Philly's favored by 8. I hammered Philly on this one. Like, give me Philly all day because the Colts right now, people are probably jumping on, and maybe even Vegas to an extent is feeling like, by Vegas, I mean the actual institution of gambling, not like the Raiders. Vegas right now is probably favoring the Colts a little bit more too. Like, ooh, well, it's a new wrinkle. Maybe we should wait and see. I can already tell you the Colts are not going to play like that again. And the Eagles are coming in pissed after that loss to Washington. Hammer the Eagles. I don't care if that spread just went up to 14. Keep hitting the Eagles. They're going to cover. We're going to move over to Arizona at the LA Rams. Very boring matchup as Matt Stafford and Kyler Murray both did not play. I actually picked this game pretty easily via that I know that Colt McCoy is a pretty good backup quarterback. And, I mean, Wolford's fine, but he's like your average backup quarterback. So I picked the Cardinals in this one as a 3-point dog. I'm like, well, yeah, it's going to be in LA, but if neither of the starting quarterbacks are playing, I trust Colt McCoy more than I do John Wolford. Well, guess what? They win the game by 10. So that one was easy enough. We'll move on to a funner game, Dallas at Green Bay. This one went to overtime, 31-28 in favor of Green Bay. Look, story of this game, because this is one of the ones I actually got to watch the entire fourth quarter in the overtime period. Dallas had them. And if Dallas could have just kept running the ball, they probably walk away with a W. I mean, Green Bay, while they were down 14, were still running the ball. Tony Pollard, I got it here. He ran 22 times for 115 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon together, 37 carries, 203 yards and a touchdown. Look, the run games were going for both teams, but when you're up 14, you got to stick to that. You got to keep handing it, not just to Pollard, but I don't even remember the guy's name, but whoever they were utilizing as their second running back, I got to see all 5 of his carries, and he was running the ball for like 7 yards a clip. You just keep running the ball. Like, I don't understand what happened there. They all of a sudden got pass happy, and it's like, no, this is not the time to get pass happy. You guys are running the ball just fine. You got a 2 touchdown lead. Stop throwing the fucking ball. But they let Green Bay hang around. And look, I mean, even though Green Bay is on a pretty terrible year from an offensive perspective, it's Aaron Rodgers. You can't just let Aaron Rodgers do Aaron Rodgers shit. Like, he's going to do it eventually if you keep giving him the opportunity. Just bad move on Dallas there. But I do think that coming out of this week, I don't feel much different about Green Bay, and I don't feel any different about Dallas. I still think Dallas is going to go to Minnesota this week and take the win there. And I think Green Bay is going to lose Thursday night to Tennessee. I don't think that Green Bay is now all of a sudden a good team. I don't think that the Cowboys are now all of a sudden a bad team. I just think this game happened to go that way. And shit, when it's that 425 prime, everybody's watching it on TV game, shit happens like that, okay? Like, you get to see more weird shit happen. We're going to move on to the Sunday night game, the Los Angeles Chargers at the San Francisco 49ers. This one goes 22-16 in favor of San Fran. I was very happy in this one. I had San Fran winning the game. I had LA covering the spread at +7, and I had the under at 40, whatever it was, 40 whatever. They never hit 40. So I got the trifecta on that game. So we look at this game like some of the other teams that I've mentioned so far. I don't know why the Chargers decided not to run the ball more. Granted, time of possession here was 23 minutes to 37 minutes in favor of San Francisco. So I know they didn't have the ball as much, but I think it would have really benefited them to try to run the ball, because when you're missing Keenan Allen, you're missing Mike Williams, Gerald Everett goes down in the first quarter, you're out of weapons. You know who you have? You have Austin Eckler. Like, let the guy carry the ball. Because when you look at what they did as far as a rushing perspective, we're looking at 51 yards to 157 yards. Like, that's honestly, that's your difference. San Fran was able to get the ball, and then they controlled the ball. LA would get the ball, and yeah, they got some nice stuff in the first half there. They ended up, I think they went into the half up 10 or something along those lines. It was, I feel like it was more than a touchdown. Maybe it was just a touchdown, but they had a lead going into the half. Run the ball. That's your only good weapon right now is Austin Eckler. Until your guys come back, it's Austin Eckler. Utilize him. Instead, they kept trying to trot Herbert out there to throw to guys that you don't even know their names. And then as soon as San Fran would get the ball back, it's just a methodical drive downfield. Christian McCaffrey here, whatever the other running back's name was there. I totally forgot who else was running the ball for them. I'm sure I know who it was, but I don't remember. They just kept the ball. And that's all that mattered to them, because as long as they're driving the ball downfield and all they got to do is outscore 16, of course they're going to outscore 16. Jimmy G's a competent, capable quarterback. I don't think San Fran's going to be a team that you have to worry about winning the whole thing this year. I could still see them sneaking out of the NFC, though. I mean, the NFC's weak. Philly looks like the best team by a mile. I got everybody else below them by a pretty good margin, including Minnesota. San Fran's got as good of a chance as anybody over there. I just think you gotta play San Fran almost the same way that San Fran plays you. You got to control the ball, because they're also going to control the ball. If you come out there as a high octane offense and it doesn't work, you're just going to give them the ball and they're going to keep it for 35 minutes a game. You don't want that. Just bad move by the Chargers there. We're going to take a little sip here. Final game of the week, Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles. Commanders come out on top here, 32-21. So time of possession kind of tells a little bit of the story here as well. 40 minutes to 20 minutes in favor of Washington. Philly also got away from the run game. Now, this benefited me because I needed Miles Sanders to not do shit so I could win in fantasy. That did happen. Miles Sanders didn't do shit, and I won in fantasy. But as far as the Philadelphia Eagles are concerned, that was not the right strategy. And even if it's not Sanders, I mean, hell, they got guys that can run the ball all over that team. I don't know why they got away from that. They started getting pass happy. And again, when your pass game's not being incredibly effective, and especially when you're taking shots down the field that aren't working, you're just giving the ball back to a team that, look, Taylor Heineke can be exciting, but that's a small bit of yardage at a time kind of team. That's not the kind of team that's blowing the roof off any stadiums anytime soon. So giving them the ball back where they can just, I mean, they didn't even run the ball that well. Like they ran for 3.2 yards per carry. That's actually pretty bad. the they just were getting enough, and then we're getting first downs, and then field goal here. Okay, touchdown drive. And then late in the game, obviously, you had some inopportune turnovers there that, I mean, those things happen. But the big takeaway from the Monday night game here, when a team gets to 8-0, people start talking about, ooh, can they go undefeated? That pressure mounts on the team that is undefeated, and all of a sudden they lose a dumb game that they shouldn't lose. So this isn't incredibly shocking that Philadelphia loses this game. I didn't think it was going to be this one. I thought they would probably lose to a team a little bit better than Washington, but you had to expect that they were probably going to drop a game that they shouldn't at some point, because in theory, by the way they played so far, they should just win all of them, right? Well, no, because very few teams end up, I mean, shit, it's the only teams that even made out of the regular season undefeated was the 72 Dolphins and the 07 Patriots. So it doesn't really ever happen. Obviously, they were going to lose. I just didn't think it was going to be this week. However, I did think it was going to be a close game, and I also got Washington plus 11 on that one, and I got the over on 43.5. I did miss Philly winning the game, though. So not the trifecta, but I did get 2 of the 3. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the wrap-up of last NFL week here. Tomorrow, there will be another Nobody is Shiftier breaking down Week 11. Can't wait. I am going to get out of here because apparently in about 3.5 minutes, I am doing an exchange of product, and no, not a drug deal. I am handing somebody vanilla extract and cinnamon, or pumpkin spice rather. And he is handing me gluten-free bread so that Michelle can make him gluten-free stuffing. Till next time, this has been Nobody is Shiftier.